Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Wilson Center. My name is Will Pomeranz. I'm Deputy Director here of the Kennan Institute, but I also have the privilege of heading up the Wilson Center's Rule of Law Initiative, which looks at legal developments at a regional, global, and multidisciplinary standpoint, and we are so pleased to be working today with our colleagues to host today's important meeting on innovation and the rule of law. I think the event is particularly timely because we're going to be looking at all those aspects of the rule of law, regional, global, and multidisciplinary. And it's also because the rule of law remains at the top of the to-do list in virtually any country where the US engages. Yet while we have a clear idea about what our ultimate objective might be and potential paths, getting there usually proves to be much more difficult than originally believed. Multiple approaches have been tried to achieve the rule of law and firmly establish this principle in different countries. And today we're going to discuss what has worked and potentially what has not worked in different regions in the full recognition that one size does not fit all when it comes to rule of law programming. In organizing today's event, our goal is to provide alternative approaches that can engage both on the on-the-ground practitioner level, those who are engaged in rule of law training, and also on the academic level for scholars who assess the results of various rule of law programs and initiatives. This is our second meeting that we have worked with Joel Samuels and the Rule of Law Collaborative at the University of South Carolina. They have been great partners, and we continue to be pleased to work with them, and they do such excellent work in the area of rule of law programming and in innovation as well. So we're extremely pleased to be working with Joel. We also want to thank the Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs at the U.S. Department of State and the Just Track program. The Just Track program seeks to improve the skills and knowledge of individuals funding, designing, managing, or implementing justice sector programs. It provides a multitude of stakeholders the opportunity to share their experiences and lessons regarding rule of law and justice sector programming, and that is what we intend to do today. So a big welcome to the Wilson Center. We look forward to the day's event, and I'll pass the program off to Joel Samuels.
Thank you, Will. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to, well, you're a lot taller than I am, I've just realized. Welcome to what we hope will be the first of a series of annual symposia on innovations in rule of law programming as part of the Just Track cooperative agreement between the University of South Carolina's Rule of Law Collaborative and the State Department's INL CAP Bureau. Today we will focus on three distinct approaches to rule of law and the innovative aspects of those particular topics: holistic approaches, adaptation, and sustainability. We've tried to orient the day's session around those three poles with an eye towards avoiding siloed discussions about individual projects. So each of our speakers and moderators will talk about different projects across different regions. You'll see in the program an indication of the different countries where there may be a particular focus by a speaker, but with a notion of really getting a sense of the different topical areas across different experiences and across different regions. As many of you will know from your own experiences, a variety of drivers, from reduced funding for rule of law to implementations of projects in fragile and post-conflict environments, lead us to seek innovative approaches to rule of law programming in the present day. What does it even mean to be innovative? What are the appropriate moments to turn to innovative solutions? And when we speak of innovation, do we mean innovation as to an entire project or just as to one component or approach to that project? Is innovation even a good thing, or are there moments where innovation can lead us down bad paths and lead to unexpected problems? And how do we avoid the risks of focusing so much on innovation that we lose sight of the core mission of the rule of law program itself? Today we'll explore those and many related questions. Throughout, we'll be asking ourselves whether, in fact, a particular program or particular approach is innovative. I encourage you to be critical about the different experiences you hear about and to be open-minded about those experiences as you consider those experiences discussed by our moderators and speakers and in light of your own experiences, which I hope you'll have opportunities to share during the course of the day's discussions. I encourage you to actively participate in what we hope will be lively discussions. We'll have opportunities for you to share your own observations and your own experiences through Q&A after each of the sessions, but also through what for us is one of our own steps at being a little bit innovative in our own programming today, which is the use of this Poll Everywhere software about which you've received information. It's on a bright yellow sheet. It's also on the walls, and as we ask questions, we will have information on how to use Poll Everywhere. This falls into exactly the line I'm talking about. Our hope is to use this as a way to have an interactive discussion with the audience, but not to use it so much that it kind of crosses the line from helpful and innovative to kitschy. Kitschy is the operative thing to avoid, in my view. And we also have, as a part of the innovative approach that we're trying to take today, a different approach to our sessions themselves. You'll see, and shortly the three moderators for the sessions will join me on stage, that our approach today will be more in a discussion format. So our speakers won't provide 15 or 20 minutes of direct remarks. They'll engage in a discussion format with their moderators, prompted by questions, so that we can really, again, get into specific questions and not be focused on an individual project alone. I want to thank particularly the moderators and speakers today. To participate in a symposium always requires a certain amount of preparation, but for this one, because of the approach we've taken, we had to coordinate at times across 3 continents. I think Radha had the hardest one, to try to arrange Skype and phone calls so that they could speak in advance to make sure that we had a singular vision of how each of the sessions would work. Thanks very much to the Wilson Center, and in particular Will Pomeranz and Madison Brady, who's not here, for their continued support and partnership with the Rule of Law Collaborative at the University of South Carolina. We value this partnership and are looking forward to seeing it grow, particularly as your own Rule of Law initiative grows. Thanks to our colleagues in the back from the State Department and in the front from the State Department's Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs for their continued support and input, and in particular to Jenny Murphy and Alex Kane, who are here today. And finally, a huge thank you to the members of our ROLC team at USC who have helped put together this event and a series of others over the course of this month. We're a very small 5-person team, and this is the 3rd event this month we've hosted, starting in Dubai on June 1st. With an advanced training that took place here in Washington last week and culminating with today's event. I'd like to take 2 minutes to briefly describe the work of JustTrack for those of you who may not be familiar with what JustTrack is. Will has mentioned already, it's a cooperative agreement between INLCAP and the University of South Carolina. It has 4 primary components. Trainings in rule of law, which take place on a quarterly basis here in Washington, D.C., both at an introductory and advanced level. In the coming year, we hope to also add a specialized course on Islamic law and rule of law. We also host 3 symposia a year, 2 here in Washington and 1 abroad in Dubai on countering violent extremism and the rule of law was our most recent foreign symposium, all of which, trainings and symposia, are designed to increase capacity on rule of law within the U.S. government and with its implementing partners, and importantly, to build stronger collaboration and cooperation among the interagency, a challenge that those of you in the U.S. government will appreciate. We also engage in research on topics of interest to practitioners, and you'll hear about one such project being conducted by a professor at the University of South Carolina, Ben Roth, during one of our panels this morning. And finally, our aim is to strengthen the network of rule of law practitioners, and we do this through a variety of mechanisms, including opportunities like you'll have today during breaks and at lunch to interact with each other, but most importantly through a website that we have designed that we're very proud of, which is on some banner somewhere, www.justtrack.org, which provides a clearinghouse of information about programs and recent programs, not just sponsored by JustTrack and the University of South Carolina, but globally on rule of law, publications on rule of law, including summaries. And the thing we're proudest of is an interactive map that allows you to access not only those pieces of information, solicitations by country or by region, but also our growing network of rule of law practitioners. So if you're heading to Mali, you'd be leaving Mali right now, but if you were heading to Tunisia today, you would be able to access some other actors from the U.S. government and implementers who are active in that region, and we're building that out again as we speak. So I encourage you to visit the JustTrack website. You'll hear more about JustTrack throughout the day, but now it's time to get the symposium underway, and it's my pleasure now to introduce our keynote speaker, Ambassador Alexander Arvizu. Ambassador Arvizu was appointed Deputy Assistant Secretary in the Department of State's Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs in February 2015. In that role, he directs INL program activities in Africa and the Middle East, as well as INL's Criminal Justice and Assistance Partnership, or CAP, program. Prior to this appointment, Ambassador Arvizu served as ambassador to Albania from 2010 until 2015. He was twice Deputy Chief of Mission, actually initially in Phnom Penh, Cambodia, and then in Bangkok, Thailand. And he's had overseas postings in Japan and South Korea as well. He's a career member of the Senior Foreign Service with the rank of Minister Counselor, and it's our pleasure to have him here today and to have him open our event. Ambassador Arvizu.
Thank you. And I am even shorter than Joel, so I have to lower this a little bit further. Thanks for that kind introduction. Good morning to all of you. I should start out with a little personal note. In the last century, when I was a college student, and I was a senior at Georgetown, I had arguably the best work-study program imaginable. I was an intern at the Woodrow Wilson Center, which at that time was located in the Smithsonian Castle Building, which of course was built in the prior century. And being an intern or being on a work-study program at the Wilson Center meant that I had an access pass to the Library of Congress. And back in those days when there wasn't anything online, and so it was just great to be able to crawl through the back places of the Library of Congress. So, and this is actually the first time I've been back to the Wilson Center since that time, 35 years ago. So it's great to come home in a manner of speaking. Also, with this Washington weather, I'm very pleased that the Wilson Center pays its electricity bills. The air conditioning is...
It gets very cold on stage, so you're
Yeah.
lucky it's early morning still.
So welcome to all of you, and I should, of course, thank in advance the panelists and the organizers of this symposium, especially USC's Rule of Law Collaborative. We've had this partnership with them for some time now, and it's been a very productive one. And also to the Kennan Institute and the Wilson Center for hosting today's event. Rule of law, we talk a lot about that. And if we knew all the keys, I'd be a billionaire, right? I mean, I'd be richer than Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer and all those guys. But there is no one key. And so it's something that we just have to constantly keep pecking away at. And that's what this program today is all about. And I look forward to it being a significant contribution to that endeavor, because this, by its very nature, is something that is steeped in innovation. And perhaps that's why it has attracted several of you today and to the nature of this study in the first place. What you're trying to do and what we're all trying to do requires us to adapt to the new challenges, to the many new challenges in environments that are shifting and changing constantly. What are some of these? They're, at the risk of stating the obvious, we face new threats, including those posed by increasingly global and fluid extremist and criminal organizations. And they're often working in cahoots with one another. There are new opportunities to consider, such as different technologies and the associated tools. And in a related vein, new data and information, all of which requires us to reevaluate our prior assumptions and to reconsider what works, not just in theory, but in practice. Not what has just worked in the past, but what will work now and into the future. This field also demands innovation because what we're trying to do has the potential to transform societies and institutions through the introduction of new norms, new legal structures, new ideas, new relationships. One thing with the advent of information technology is there are more people in the world who understand this, compared to when I was in college. Didn't talk too much about globalization. There's still a lot of people who are illiterate, who don't have access to the information, but there's no question that with each passing year, the capacity, the ability of people around the globe to have access to this kind of information, to understand what we talk about when we say rule of law, human rights, that's growing. And so it's important to tap into that and to adapt these new technologies that we have in that direction. Communication and collaboration are absolutely critical to putting these innovations into practice. Therefore, we have made it a point to bring to this conference various stories which illustrate how we can successfully overcome the challenges that we face to implementing rule of law programming. Hopefully, we'll also have a chance to brainstorm to hear from you about ways to harness new tools and to embark on different approaches that can make our efforts more effective. At INL, and we prefer to call ourselves INL because International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Matters is a mouthful. So at INL, despite being bureaucrats, and we're proud to be bureaucrats, we like to think we're good bureaucrats, we do try to capitalize on creative, new programmatic approaches that tackle both the traditional and evolving rule of law challenges. A couple of examples. New technologies are aiding the fight against corruption and opacity in criminal justice systems, whether through the use of things like automatic court docket, digitalized case tracking systems, or other types of electronic platforms that pool and publicly disclose information. Additionally, crowdsourcing technology platforms like some of you probably heard Stop the Bribes are harnessing increasing interconnectivity to help solve collective action problems. In Nigeria, one of the countries for which that I oversee, INL sponsored a codeathon, and it's something called the Find a Cop app. It's something that uses GPS to help Nigerians locate and report incidents to their nearest police station. It's still a work in progress, but it's proved to be very promising. And applications such as these are being adopted even by some of the agencies that they were designed to monitor. And I think that's maybe one of the ultimate compliments to their success. Another example that some of you may be familiar with is INL's Citizens Booth project in Mexico. This is a partnership between a prominent Mexican NGO and the Office of the Attorney General in Mexico, and it is designed to educate citizens on their rights, provide information on accessing the criminal judicial system there, and to gather feedback on customer service so that public ministries can be held more accountable. In this ever-changing world of ours, it is especially challenging for the United States government, for bilateral and multilateral donors and implementers to seek ways to work together to provide foreign sector assistance that builds upon the capacity of justice sector actors. The Just Track program, which you've heard about already, was developed by the University of South Carolina to enhance the expertise and coordination of precisely those people who design, manage, and implement justice sector programs through rule of law training and symposia such as this. Now, today marks the 6th in a series of regional and thematic symposia. Some have taken place here, some elsewhere outside the United States, to promote brainstorming and the consideration of innovative solutions to a wide variety of contemporary and emerging challenges. These include empowering women in mixed legal systems, protecting vulnerable populations in the Northern Triangle, and addressing violent extremism through rule of law development in the Middle East. I hope I've whetted your appetite a little bit. I've learned through all these years of working for the government, if you're the opening speaker, try to keep it short because you got a brief window to hold their attention, but don't try to do too much. So I've looked at the schedule. You've got a good day ahead of you, and as Joel and Will have mentioned, really the success is going to depend largely on you and your willingness to engage. So please do that. Thank you for your interest, your participation in rule of law implementation. It's a challenging field. You know, there's no question about it. As I said, I think it's easy to, as we think about it, you know, whether you're a practitioner or an academician about looking in this area, it's easy to think of the glass as half empty. And it is half empty, but it's half full too. And we can only make it half full by active engagement and participation. So as you seek to harness the power of innovation, expanding the reach of justice, keep at it and don't give up. All right? Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Ambassador Arvizu has said that he has time to take a couple of questions if that's okay, but he does have to get back to the State Department. So this is our first chance to open the interactivity, and I already see a hand ready to go up, please. And if you could just introduce yourselves as well, that would be wonderful.
My name is Grace Kang. I'm with the Institute for Korean American Studies. I just want to ask about how you measure effectiveness. For example, if one of the INL programs trains 100 police officers in human rights standards, do you collaborate with the Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor in terms of assessing whether that training caused any change, or how do you assess success?
Yeah. No, that's a very good question. So, you know, to take the State Department as an institution, and I've been a Foreign Service officer for 35 years now. For 34 of those years, I've been involved in one shape, form, or another with the policy side of the House. If you will. I mean, yeah, I don't know if it's accurate or helpful to divide up the bureaucracy this way, but you know, sometimes you have policy and you have programs. You know, they should be in harmony, and we work to do that. But for 34 years, I was really steeped in policy. So now I'm in a program area. You mentioned DRL, Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor. You know, there are various indices. There are reports that we prepare for Congress, the Human Rights Report, the International Narcotics report, trafficking in persons. You know, there are so many. And so as an overseer of the programmatic side, obviously, you know, we have certain criteria that are you know, honed through best practices in terms of accounting for the money. You know, an implementer says they're going to, you know, the goal is to train, like you said, X number of police officers or to reduce workloads. So, you know, a lot of that is metrics, and I'm still learning about that. I understand that that's important, and there are people who do that for a living. I try to marry up those two, and I see that as my position. It's, you know, it's a very unscientific way to say it, but it's one of those things where I don't know exactly what it is, but if I see it, I'll recognize it. And that's why we rely on our missions, our embassies overseas. You know, my best friend, best man at my wedding is our current ambassador to Nigeria. You know, I've got colleagues in Tunisia and elsewhere. And so we ask them, you know, are things improving? You know, is the sense on the street that the government, that the institutions there are making progress in being more accountable to the people? Do the media, you know, does the media establishment feel like there's more space to report abuses, et cetera, than was the case before? I don't know how precise you can be sometimes, but you know, anecdotal evidence, information can be very, very helpful. That's sort of what we try to do. Does that answer your question at all? Okay, thank you.
One last question, please.
My name is Sohail, and I was going to ask you if you could, I'm not very well informed on this, but in terms of placing people in positions, is there some policy on rotation in the Department of State where people get appointed to oversee, for instance, in the INL area, and they may not have training in law or human rights or finance, and then they are rotated through for a couple of years, and then they may be transferred to some other position. How does the bureaucracy and civil service work? I just would be great to hear it from you. Because
Sure.
I didn't feel it said anything about innovation, and people may just use that time to enhance their own learning and career track instead of contributing while traveling to many countries without really knowing what's happening in
Right,
those countries.
right. Sure.
That's-
No, that's a very good question, and I think I have a pretty good answer for that. Obviously, I have a little bit of a bias or prejudice since I've chosen to do this for my professional career. But when it comes to say INL directors overseas, people who serve as the principal advisor to the American ambassador to the AID mission on rule of law programming. Many of these are Foreign Service officers. Sometimes they're civil servants, and they do tend to rotate every 2 or 3 years. Sometimes they might be there for 4. But we try not to keep them there too long. But these are the directors. There are, on the other hand, lots of people, the locally engaged staff, implementers, many of whom have been there for years on end and really know the terrain well. So you can see where I'm going.
I mean, they will use the 2 years to enhance their learning and knowledge, and when will they contribute? Then they will be moved out after that.
Well, no. You see, it's important to strike the balance, because if I spend 20 years in Indonesia working on, I will be, assuming I'm reasonably intelligent, I will become very steeped and familiar with the ways that things are done in Indonesia and probably will know more than anyone else. Is that the most effective? It's nice to have expertise, but there's something to be said for bringing in people with different experiences, different approaches, different methodologies, different perspectives. It doesn't, I'll be the first to admit, it doesn't always work because like anything else, you get some people who aren't very good at what they do. But for those who are good in the civil service, in the foreign service, this practice of rotating people out, I think is, it's like hitting the refresh button. I think it's absolutely critical. You don't want everybody in your program doing that because then everybody's, coming in and they've got a brilliant new idea and probably repeating things that have been tried before and maybe didn't work before. So it's important to have that balance. We pay people pretty good money to go in, to be a good leader, to direct the programs, to tap into the expertise, but not be afraid to challenge, certain assumptions. So the key is trying to strike that balance. I think the model is a good one, and I will defend that model. The key, of course, is in the implementation of that. Okay?
We're going to bring our opening remarks to a close, but I did want to thank the ambassador for coming here and getting the conference off to such a good start. And the idea of balance will be something that we'll be talking about throughout the day. So I thank you so much for your talk and questions and answers. I just want to say that it's been too long since you've been back to the Wilson Center, and that you've proved the point yet again that the interns go on and have the best careers of anybody at the Wilson Center. So thanks so much for coming.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
At this time, I'll ask the 3 moderators to join me here on stage, and we'll launch into our first short opening session just to talk a little bit with them as they will have this sort of more interactive role with the course of the day. So I'll let them settle in here, and then we'll get started.